Can we start a little with the band in general, and then we'll
Sure.
get into Slanted? But from Stockton, California,
Yes.
I'd love to hear both of you just even weigh in on the idea of, do you think of these guys as a California band?
1,000,000,000%.
Oh, wow.
You do. I remember in the post sort of Kurt Cobain thing, so much was being made of scenes at the time, the Seattle scene, I guess the North Carolina scene and all that. I was definitely a Pavement fan before I could figure out where the hell they were from. I mean, there was some information Stockton, but then they were kind of University of Virginia, I guess. I mean, there was like conflicting information. And I think it seemed there was this deliberate obscurification of, is that a word? I don't know. But you know what I mean?
It would fit very well in a Pavement song.
They seemed to be like making it intentionally hard for you to figure some of the stuff out. They were taking on fake names, SM and Spiral Stairs. Was it a real band even? I mean, did they play live? There was a lot of stuff they were shrouded in mystery, and I certainly didn't think of them as like a California band. I was trying to figure out if they were a band of any sort.
I mean, I'm a little biased because I'm a California girl, a California native. But I just feel like that songwriting nucleus, Spiral Stairs and Sue and Malcolmus, known each other since they were 10 years old in Stockton, peak suburban California. And there's a thing about California suburbs that like cannot be replicated. And I think you can hear it so much in the ennui of these songs.
I've been dreaming, traced out but dreaming. The sun comes up, the blisters burn my soul. I'm dreaming of some.
That's like a really particularly Californian ennui. You can go to Virginia, honey. You can go to New York City, the Big Apple. You're not going to shake that. Wherever you go, there you are. I mean, Spiral Stairs even did a little stint in Arizona, tangentially related to the ennui of California.
Yeah.
That fits in as well.
There are basements everywhere. You're right. Where kids hang out.
We actually don't have basements in California.
Oh, yeah? But how do you write disenchanted basement music if you don't have actual basements?
In the garage, babe. Come on.
The garage.
Man. Yeah.
Have we been to Stockton? Has anyone been? I've never been to Stockton.
I've not been to Stockton, but I'm from Torrance, which is a suburb down in the south that's like near Long Beach, the South Bay. Stockton, I know, is quite industrial, but also quite sort of like bleak, sprawling. So I haven't been there, but I've been there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Go down to the outlet once again.
So it's Far East Bay, I think you would call it.
Yeah.
I think I've driven through there, and I tried really hard to build a whole Stockton case for this episode. It is, that poem, Casey at the Bat, where they talk about joy in Mudville? That was Stockton. So there you go, mud, dreary weather. Stockton, the biggest city, I think, in U.S. history to declare for bankruptcy. But, industrial, maybe like never industrial, just always post-industrial somehow. I feel like that's my idea of Stockton.
I think it has bad air quality, smoggy. Yeah.
I guess like a lot of bands that I'm attracted to kind of feels like they come from just nowhere and everywhere at the same time. And so the Californianess has never really clicked for me.
What about Malcolmus's accent? What about his vocal delivery, which is like, honestly, the closest a man has come to vocal fry in my estimation. That's a Valley girl.
That's true.
Malcolmus is a Valley girl.
He
just
embraces
like
it. Yeah. Yeah, the sort of slacker. Well, I don't know. The slacker thing I know is very touchy with that band, and they have lots of opinions on that. But that I guess plays into the California trope, if not the actual aesthetic.
But you know what? I mean, this may be pro the California argument, but when you talk about indoor music and stuff, and I said it in my essay, when I saw Pavement in person, and minus Gary Young, they seemed healthier to me than any other band that I was seeing at the time. They certainly, in the coming out of the grunge thing, they didn't look like they were on hard drugs. Yeah. They looked like they had tans, and they maybe like hung out outdoors at barbecues and talked about sports with their friends.
Playing tennis.
Tennis, yeah. Exactly.
Famously.
And then they very much, there was something in that being collegiate and whatever that made me feel connected. Because they were not overly angsty. They more seemed like they're sort of detached in a suburban way, but still gentlemen of some sort.
One more thing on Stockton. There's a little interesting musical legacy there. Chris Isaak is from Stockton, but so are Dave Brubeck and a few other, Gil Evans. I think a bunch of, jazz greats are from Stockton. So I don't know, maybe is that a way to get to this album itself? I mean, when people do sort of say it's jazzy or it's unformed in a kind of jazz way, do we want to start talking about the album itself and the kind of how it came together and musically why it sort of landed in such a fresh way?
I can say that when I heard the record, jazz wasn't something I thought of, but I remember, like a lot of great bands, there were influences that I didn't know, that the older people or the, record store clerks would be like, oh man, you like Pavement? Why don't you just listen to Swell Maps? And I'd be like, I don't know what that is, A. But B, one of the reasons is Swell Maps broke up a long time ago and I can go see Pavement next week with my friends. So that sounds more fun right now. Things like The Fall, Swell Maps, that kind of thing. This music, in falling in love with it, led me to a lot of other things just on recommendations that I personally had not heard before.
The Fall really complicates our conversation here. The fact that that's the band that the early Pavement was most compared to is The Fall. I don't know if that counts for you, Greg, or for me.
I don't think that's the autumn. I don't think they're
I agree.
I know. I was going to ask you guys, what happens if an album is
You're not allowed.
autumnal album? What
come on.
What,
Guys,
what,
what are we doing here?
what happens if
Get out.
folklore comes on here, babe? What are you going to do?
Heads or
Summer?
tails?
There's only 2 seasons.
Yeah, I feel The Fall is interesting because that was like the comparison, but
Yeah.
I feel like in terms of like cited influences, it was really never The Fall, it was Can, which summary. And The Replacements.
German.
Also.
Bleak.
REM has got to be,
REM.
the obscurification feels like an REM thing to me. I think that was like something where REM, some of the mystery seemed to me a little borrowed from that.
Yeah. I know. I feel like Malcolm said at one point that he was really inspired by Paul Westerberg, just like the cheekiness of the lyrics and also the sort of like upturning of classical songs to make them kind of like scuzzy and punky, but still having that like classical structure, which I totally do here in Pavement.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about actually some of the kind of structure in that? To me, the band, and especially this record, is constantly navigating kind of like accessibility and hookiness and then just inscrutability in a kind of really attractive way. But like the album starts with a song that just like immediately shows you that they have the chops to write a perfect pop song and then just makes it very complicated right away, which I think is just sort of like a thesis statement for the band. I mean, the lyrics get pretty inscrutable pretty fast.
We're on the 13 Delta Strip in an abandoned house, but I will wait there. I'll be waiting forever. I'm waiting, 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 waiting. Go!
There's a sort of like long, strange guitar solo. And then as the album goes on, I mean, you get songs that just sort of like don't have any traditional structure in a way that I think is really attractive to a lot of Pavement fans.
I mean, one of the things that I was thinking of is that at this time, we're a few years on from Daydream Nation or whatever, but Sonic Youth was certainly also dealing in that kind of thing where, 30-second blasts of noise, strange interludes, and then, some really well-crafted pop songs that are kind of unique, but still traditional in some way in their structures.
Yeah. Do you have any songs, Yasi, that you want to chat about?
Well, I have 2 Summer Babe tattoos, so I'm not going to beat the allegations of being mentally ill and obsessed with that song. To me, like you said, I think it's a perfect pop song, and it just really grabs you. I kind of love the opaqueness of Pavement's lyrics because it leaves like so much space for you to make it yours. Like I think I said on our podcast that like I don't care what Stephen Malkmus thought this song was about. This song is about me and my high school ex-boyfriend. So that's what it's about. And there's room for that in these lyrics because I don't know what this man is on about. Nobody knows what this man is on about.
Can I ask you about the sort of way you find yourself in the lyrics? Is it that you feel like I've made them my own because I figured out what they mean? Or are there times when you just sort of don't know what they mean and there's a sort of pleasure and beauty in that as well?
Yeah, I think I read something that in an interview with Malcolm that he said, like, even though we don't like go for like clarity of lyrics, we sort of are making emotionally resonant songs. Like the meaning is within the music and the lyrics are kind of just the icing on top. That's not what they said. I'm brutally paraphrasing. But
That's
I
what
think
your tattoo says, right? The lyrics
that's
are the
exactly
icing on
it's
top.
that
Yeah.
entire thing. It's just up and down the arm. But yeah, like the meaning for me comes from the feeling that's evoked from the music, and then the words fit perfectly as sounds. But it's not. I mean, Ice Baby, that's such a cool way to start a song. And then it's like, oh, you're gonna say it's not a love song when you start it with Ice Baby.
Ice, baby, I saw your girlfriend and she's eating her fingers like they're just another meal, but she waits there.
But people also interpret that as a dig at Ice Ice Baby, which was in the zeitgeist at the moment.
Sure,
But yeah,
sure.
right. It can be a bunch of things. Greg, how do you think about his lyricism?
It's funny. I tend to like story songs as a listener, and Pavement's one of my favorite bands, so it's like a huge exception. I think but I go back to the REM thing. I think that's something Michael Stipe was really playing with in the generation just before them, or so, that there's a lot of those lyrics that sound exactly right and emotionally resonate, but maybe they mean different things to different people because when you see him on a page, it doesn't really convey just one thing. And I think he seems to be taking that lead. I'm not sure. I think that Michael Stipe invented that, but that seems like a popular example just before them in the college rock world. And I think the words do so much great lifting here, but no, I don't know what they mean.
Well, I was surprised. I think I learned this from your Bandsplain, Yasi, just other research. But, it seems like Malcolm, maybe a lot of these lyrics were written in the room while recording, which I guess on the one hand, I'm like, sure, it's sort of free association. But on the other hand, to come up with this stuff just in real time and still reach for something so kind of Baroque or whatever, I'm a little surprised by that. But that again, if the room is December 24th, 1990, it makes me think that there's some wintriness in the air.
I think what's cool about the way the lyrics are put together is they're sort of like snippets of imagery. So it's like watching a film or something, right? Like in the way that like sort of an avant-garde film doesn't have to have a through line, but each image that's like evoked is emotionally resonant on its own. Like, I saw your girlfriend and she's eating her fingers like they're just another meal. Like that alone is like, that's like baby shoes never worn. You know what I mean? Like done. There's a little short story right there.
Yeah.
That one also reminds me of the, when you're talking about Westerberg, his famous line, fingernails and cigarettes are a lousy dinner. Feels like that
Yeah.
might be a nod a little bit to Westerberg eating the fingers like that.
There's a ton of little nods here. And I think also the moment that he does land on something that's a little more direct and well understood, I think it hits even more because it's surrounded by other stuff that's so
Like
sort
when
of
he
rangy.
screams, "Don't go."
Well, for instance.
Bye. I'm dead.
Yes.
Shot through the heart.
But even, what's the line in Zurich is Staying where it says, I am not one half of the problem, you could just see.
Just hold me back or let me run.
Yeah. You're going to make it? Can we talk about song structure a little bit? Like, especially with just like in the second song in this album, Trigger Cut. Like, I tried to break down what exactly is going on in the structure of this song. It starts with a pre-chorus maybe, and then goes directly to a bridge, and then it goes to it's just pastiche, but it all seems to work.
Still knows the tricks. Tricks are everything to me until it's free. I've got a trigger cut and I can't pull it back. But
Craig, have you thought about that kind of structure? What do
I
you
was
think they're
just
playing with
thinking
here?
that, I mean, the structures seem like I love this record. I've never taken out my guitar and tried to figure out how to play one of these songs.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't seem like that kind of music to me. Like, it's their thing, and I wouldn't insert myself. It never feels like something you take down to the open mic night at your local coffee house. It feels like it's theirs and theirs alone, which is a testament to what a unique thing they created.
We've mentioned Gary Young a few times. Yasi, do you remember your very long podcast episode? Do you want to give us a primer on who Gary Young is and how he plays into especially the first couple years of this band?
Yeah, he was like a local musician guy that they got connected with who was quite a bit older than them, right? Like a decade more
Yeah, in his 40s.
older than them. And he was a real kook. But it sounds like he had so much to do. Like without him, there would be no Pavement, right? He provided sort of studio space and like a little more expertise on recording and things that, you know, these young 20-something-year-olds didn't really possess.
He also was apparently a very bad alcoholic.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And I think about that being very psychically hard, you know, if I was 22 or whatever, getting in a van with someone in their 30s who had that kind of drinking problem, that it must have been, I don't know if it's part of their uniqueness, but it's a unique part of their story.
Yeah. It might also be like when your parents like catch you smoking, so they make you smoke the entire pack of cigarettes, and then you're like, I'm never smoking again. Like maybe they just like saw the ghost of Christmas future and were like, maybe we'll just keep it together a little bit of the drinking on tour tip or whatever. I also think it's interesting that he, because of his age, had none of those influences. Like there's an interview I read a while ago, it was like a Melody Maker or something, and he was like, Pixies, Sonic Youth. Like, I've never heard any of those bands. He was like, I like Slade and Kiss or whatever, you know? So it's like he might have also brought a sensibility. I mean, actually, I think Malcolm's favorite first band was Kiss too, but I think he brought something else to the table that because of his age and because of his like non-knowing about the cool shit of the present that was probably, you know, important.
And he plays drums on this record, right?
Yeah.
I don't know if he sort of inserted himself or it was just sort of by default, but they were going to record at his space because he had some equipment and then he had drums and he was like, oh, I'll play drums. And so he plays drums on this.
I think he was like, go in the back of the Village Voice or your local weekly, and he had an ad that said, you know, 8-track recording, reasonable rates, call this number. I mean, I think he probably was recording local bands, but I think he was coming to them, to provide a service originally.
Yeah. And then just hanging around, right? He'd probably like to be around young people and musicians. And yeah, the drinking is interesting because, I mean, Yasi, you're probably right that it maybe gave them a sort of glimpse of the kind of debauched life 10 years down the road. But I've also read a bunch of interviews with the band where they've kind of pointed out that they didn't realize how bad it was. And it's just a reminder that like you can be so close to that and just not see it going on. And Gary just seems like he was this merry prankster, maybe a slightly darker side at times force in the band. But, you know, Craig, you pointed out like, or was it the chickens into the audience?
The
lobsters.
lobsters
The
in
lobsters.
Boston,
Yeah.
which I've heard from, it like keeps coming up in the lore. And also when I saw him, the one show I saw him play, he wouldn't stay behind the drum set. He'd sometimes get up, and there was a chaos on stage, which incidentally they're a great band, but like I don't think their live shows are what made them legendary. Like there was something like really kind of chaotic and exciting about his presence in the first iteration.
Yeah. I think famously on their very first tour, like maybe one show in, he got drunk and cut his leg open and had to stop playing drums for like 3 more shows.
I think he tried to put a dead rabbit in Malcolm's bag at one point. I don't know where I read that. That might be lore. But then I learned from your podcast, Yasi, at one point he also on that tour goes and asks if he can get healthcare from the band, which is a very like burnout, but you're still in your 30s and 40s, like concern, right?
Yeah.
You're not thinking about healthcare, but I could use some.
Yeah, they were like early 20s, like, let's give this a go. Band? Maybe. Who cares? And he was like, I'm a middle-aged man.
Yeah.
I need to get some job security.
So he plays on this record. It's recorded in the December of 1990, and then again January 91 back in Stockton. They finish it up. It doesn't come out, as you pointed out, Craig, until a year and a bit later. Do you have any sense of, specifically with this or just in general, why would something like that happen? Why would they be sitting on this album for over a year?
Yeah, they didn't have anyone to put it out.
Yeah.
They did the single with Drag City.
Yep.
Yeah. It didn't seem like it was like nobody will take us. It seemed like it just wasn't like urgent.
Right.
Like nothing was really urgent. To, you know,
one in the
just
California Slacker column for
yeah,
that,
like
right?
the demos made it out to press before the album came out because it took so long. And I think they were just sort of like taking their time. They didn't want to sign with a major. They were like working at the Whitney, taking some acid, whatever, chill times.
You've mentioned a couple times Yasi, but these guys worked in a museum, worked at the Whitney, is a huge part of the lore. I went back and tried to find the exhibits that were on in the December of 1990 at the Whitney, and I would say fairly icy, a lot of metallic sculptures. You know, I think it was, you know, it certainly wasn't like soft watercolors or anything.
Well, in the mouth of a desert was a piece of art that was hanging in the Whitney by Kenny Sharp.
Pretend the table is a trust night. We'll put our labels down, faces down. I'll watch them yarn and twine unravel.
Didn't the Walkmen all work in a museum too when they first moved to New York and were kicking about? I think Walter Martin has talked about that. And I don't know if they did it because Pavement did it, but it feels like a pretty good job for someone who's trying to start a band, right? But do you buy, Yasi, that it kind of is part of the creative origin story for this band?
There was like this quote that was in a Caitlin Moran piece about Pavement where she said, somebody said that Pavement sounds like intelligence with nowhere to go, like frustrated intelligence. And I'm like, that kind of ties in with me, like the idea of like someone who's clearly as smart as Stephen Malkmus is like working at such an elevated cultural institution, and it's probably feeding some stimulation of his mind.
But as a security guard, not a curator.
Yeah, but you can't help but be surrounded by
No, I know, but I'm saying
that
that captures the sort of spirit too, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah. And I'm remembering now that Walter Martin from the Walkmen wrote a whole album about art that he stared at while he was, I don't know if it was the Whitney or the Met or whatever, but it is a good gig.
Side note, but I would think those days would go slowly. I know you're saying it's a good job for a band person, but it coming into that job hungover seems rough to me.
Yeah, but I feel like I imagine it gives you a lot of time to come up with songs in your mind.
Yeah.
Just saying that, like, I think he said he wrote Summer, but he had taken like mescaline or something on Earth Day and was like walking home from work, and that's where Summer Babe kind of just like formed in his mind.
Earth Day's in April, spring. We don't talk about that season on this podcast.
We don't know her on this podcast.
Yeah, so you've talked about it a little bit. You obviously had lyrics tattooed on your arm, but can you talk a little bit about like emotion and this band? I mean, I feel like the knock on Pavement sometimes is that there's a little bit of an emotional distance because there's always that sort of, I'm not channeling someone else's words here, but you know, a little bit of emotional distance, maybe a little bit of irony, and never really kind of opening up and letting the listener in. Can you make a defense for why people do seem to find a deep emotional connection to this band?
Yeah, I gotta push back against that. I'm like, okay, is the connection between your heart and ears broken, babe, if that's what's going on with you? Because again, I'm not a musician, so forgive me, but like so many of these Pavement songs have like built-in gut punches. Mm-hmm. And it's almost the Pixies Quiet Loud thing, but it's like they build into this like moment that then like kind of punches you. And like, yes, the lyrics like saccharine or like direct, no, but the vocal delivery is sometimes pretty ragged and vulnerable. You know, like you hear Malkmus yelling, "I've been crowned the king of id."
I could make it try, make it try, make it try, make it try. I've been crowned the king of id.
And there's this like plaintive, like desperation there. And like, how can you not feel an emotional charge from that? Like, to me, that's so crazy. Like, I find these, particularly this album, I mean, I'm not going to make a case for Terror Twilight being like emotionally resonant, but I'm sure people could. Like, this is not my album, but here it's like, I feel like it's impossible to not feel the like real pull of the emotion.
Craig, do you have thoughts on that? Or
Yeah. I was thinking that to me, it was like, it's always a band that I wished I was in. Like, I felt like you kind of wanted to be in on the jokes. I always felt like there were inside jokes being made that I kind of wanted to be in on more so. Even in later records, there's that, like, that song, Stereo, where they're sort of joking about Geddy Lee. What about the voice of Geddy Lee? That seems like they're having fun and you wanted to be a part of it.
What about the voice of Geddy Lee? How did it get so high? I wonder if he speaks like an ordinary guy.
I know him, and he does.
And you're my fact-checking cuz.
I definitely agree with Yasi where he can kind of like lull you in. You're like, there's something, that you aren't necessarily following. I'm thinking about Grounded off Wowie Zowie, and then he gets to Boys Are Dying in These Streets.
Right.
And you're like, oh my God, like.
Or just I was dressed for success, but success it never comes.
Yeah.
Tragic. A sad story.
yeah.
I was dressed for success, but success it never comes, and I'm the only one.
It's emotional, but it maybe like I feel outside of it, but it's still emotional, if that makes sense.
Is it vulnerable?
Yeah, I think so. I do, but I just think you're getting a look inside a glass box where that's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.